Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with my final Christmas-related review of this year. And this time, it's my album review of Michael Bublé's Christmas album, Christmas, the 10th Anniversary Deluxe Edition, in which the original and first version was released on October 21, 2011, and the deluxe version was released on November 19, 2021. This was recorded between January and August 2011 at Vancouver's Warehouse Studios and Hollywood's Capitol Studios under 143 Records and Reprise Records. It was produced by David Foster, Bob Rock, and Umberto Gatica, and its guest stars included the Pupini Sisters, Naturally Seven, Thalia, Shania Twain, and Rod Stewart. I've always admired Michael Bublé ever since I first heard about him through a couple of my paternal relatives ever since I was an 11-year-old boy. I remember one of my paternal aunts or uncles, let alone both of my paternal aunts and uncles, introducing me to Michael Bublé through his first album. And as I listened to his voice, I immediately fell in love with the quality of his singing voice. What I noticed about Mr. Bublé is that he is a combination of Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and Dean Martin. And the influences found in Bublé's voice were evident when I compare him to the likes of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. And it's not something that's easily promoted by public relations. Oh no. I do argue that it is quite legitimate because of the quality of his voice, as well as that signature smoothness that both Sinatra and Martin had in their wonderfully glorious primes, especially given the repertoire that Mr. Bublé specializes in, predominantly jazz. The main difference with Michael Bublé against those older singers that I mentioned is that he has a more youthful impetuousness in his voice. And there is that smoother charisma that he possessed and that more boyish tone that he possessed in stark comparison to the more mature voices of Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Bing Crosby. Comparisons aside, Michael Bublé is certainly in a class of his own, and I still love and respect him as a singer to this day. He does have his admirers because of how he easily emulates the likes of Sinatra, Martin, and Crosby. He does have his detractors in terms of not always emulating their best qualities, let alone sounding a bit too one-dimensional in comparison to them. Nevertheless, Michael Bublé, whether he performs on stage or records his albums, still manages to demonstrate charisma, charm, ease in his manner, good vocal focus, as well as good and clean technique, and a whole lot of lovability to boot. And his Christmas album, more specifically the 10th Anniversary Deluxe Edition, managed to demonstrate just how charming, affable, wonderfully charismatic, and exceptionally well-tempered his voice was, especially when it's backed up by a whole bunch of charisma, a whole bunch of charm, and a lot of lovability that made me swoon for him every time he opened his mouth and sang in that clear baritone sound. He not only specialized in a lot of the popular Christmas songs, most specifically Jingle Bells, Winter Wonderland, Silent Night, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, White Christmas, Blue Christmas, and Feliz Navidad, but he also had original compositions under his belt, specifically The More You Give, The More You'll Have, The Christmas Sweater, and Cold December Night. And his original compositions were the ones that I thoroughly enjoyed because they also demonstrated Michael Bublé's keen sense of musicianship and his sheer courage of not trying to copy his predecessors, i.e. Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin, among many of the great jazz and pop singers of olden days. But he also had his own voice and his own style to make these songs come to life, especially when he collaborated with the likes of Alan Chang and Bob Rock to write these songs, most specifically Cold December Night. Yes, Cold December Night was absolutely charming to listen to, and I do love the Christmas sweater because of how it can change from minor to major, and that really catchy beat that managed to make this song full of pizzazz and a lot of charm. But out of all of Michael Bublé's Christmas songs, I really enjoy The More You Give, The More You'll Have, because it is so upbeat, so catchy, and absolutely wonderful to listen to that it put a huge smile on my face. It's predominantly D flat to D major key managed to imbue a sense of joy as well as a sense of being so thrilled about the holidays that you can share it with other people, especially the ones you really love. And that is the main message of The More You Give, The More You'll Have, which is an absolute banger of a Christmas song composed by Michael Bublé, and I highly recommend that you listen to it. You will never be disappointed by that particular Christmas song, and Michael Bublé, along with many of his co-writers, have worked so hard to make this song come to life. The 10th anniversary edition of Michael Bublé's Christmas album also included 2 different versions of a couple of songs that he sang. For the first version of Winter Wonderland, it was sung in the key of D flat major, and he sung this in solo. However, in the duet version with Rod Stewart, it's at first in the key of C major when Bublé sings it. However, when Rod Stewart ends up singing Gone Away is the New Bird, it then transitions to the key of F major. So there was also that fascinating change from one major key to another major key to make the song have a lot more variation. The same story can be said about White Christmas. In the duet version with Shania Twain, it was sung in the key of B flat major. However, in Michael Bublé's solo version of White Christmas, it was sung in the key of C major. And speaking of Silent Night, instead of singing that in his usual jazzy instrumental manner, there was instead some slight orchestration as well as the help of a chorus backing him up, which also brought in some solemnity. And another surprising song choice of his was Franz Schubert's Ave Maria, which although kind of sounded a little bit awkward listening to a jazz singer sing this classical song, at least it managed to show how adept he can be at singing classical music. And Michael Bublé did a pretty fine job with singing this particular song in the key of F major. And while Schubert's Ave Maria does call for a more classically trained voice, at least Michael Bublé's version of Schubert's Ave Maria managed to be quite charming as well as quite lovely to listen to, and also shows just how adept he can be at singing classically while also using his jazz-trained voice, let alone a voice that sings predominantly jazz music, to make this song work so well. Aside from Michael Bublé himself demonstrating his versatility in his repertoire, as well as his trademark charm and lovability as a singer, the guest singers also made this record a lot stronger. As I mentioned Rod Stewart before, yes, it's really wonderful to have him on record because this was a veteran singer who has been singing for many years all over the world, and the fact that his voice was still intact and still sounded fresh and youthful was a clear demonstration to how well he was able to hone his skills as a singer and never abandon his charm and affability, thus having his voice blend beautifully with Michael Bublé's voice and also making a fine rendition of the second version of Winter Wonderland, specifically when they also navigated the key changes. Another guest singer I did mention before was Shania Twain. I do admire Shania Twain as a country singer. I thought that her voice had that pliability about her, as well as that smoothness and richness that made her absolutely lovely to listen to. And here she was singing the duet version of Winter Wonderland in B-flat major, and she also proved herself to be a fine singing partner for Michael Bublé. The smoothness and creaminess of the voice, coupled with Michael Bublé's charmingly round and handsomely youthful baritone voice managed to make them stand out so well. Especially considering that Shania Twain's mezzo/soprano voice sits comfortably in her range, as well as producing free and clear sounds all the way through. The next soloist who I love to mention is Thalía, who also sang with Bublé in Con Mis Deseos and Feliz Navidad. I first knew Thalía in her telenovela career, specifically in the title role of Marimar and María la del Barrio. And in her youthful prime in the 90s, she was gorgeously magnetic, absolutely charming. And she was one of the many Mexican female performers that I consider to possess Hollywood great looks. The fact that she also had a singing career in the late 80s to the 90s, even until this day, also made her an absolutely multi-talented artist. And what more can you expect from Thalía? There was that clarity in her voice that I love that managed to be resonant throughout the registers. She sounded well controlled in her duet with Mr. Bublé, not over-singing him and not under-singing him. She was just right. And her musical prowess as one of the finest singers I have ever heard, not only from Mexico, but also one with an international career, definitely lived up to those high standards. And Thalía managed to win me over just as much as Michael Bublé did. Moving from the solo singers, there were also singer groups that managed to collaborate well with Michael Bublé, especially the Puppini sisters, my personal favorite collaborators with Mr. Bublé, given that they have done both Frosty the Snowman and Jingle Bells. But out of these two, I consider Jingle Bells to be their greatest effort that they've ever accomplished. Not only because they worked well off of each other as musicians, but they also emitted that 1950s to 1960s feel whenever I listen to much older records. This is because they emulated Frank Sinatra's and the Andrews Sisters' rendition of Jingle Bells, which they managed to emulate so beautifully and so flawlessly that I could not have my ears taken away from them. That was just how masterfully the Puppini sisters managed to use their three-part harmony to make their voices bloom and blossom and shimmer and shine. And their collaborative work was peerless. Naturally, Seven was also just as wonderfully charming, as they were able to complement Michael Bublé's vocal performance really well, especially with their rendition of Silver Bells. The fact that they emulated the old school men's choir at the time to make this particular Christmas carol work alongside Michael Bublé managed to make them win in my eyes. Their sense of harmony, as well as working off of each other to produce these tones full of colors, nuances, and accents, was what made Naturally Seven an absolutely fine all-male singing group. And all wonderfully accomplished musical performances aside, Michael Bublé's little greeting at the very end was also quite lovely to listen to, and also demonstrated that he does have a nice, clear speaking voice. Sufficiently resonant, but still maintain that youthful charm. Michael Bublé's Christmas album, Christmas, at least the 10th anniversary deluxe edition, is a total win in my eyes. Not only did it have such an eclectic collection of familiar as well as popular Christmas songs, but it was also backed up by equally fine co-performers, from the ever-charming Puppini sisters to the fine Naturally Seven, to the evergreen veteran Rod Stewart, to the fabulous Shania Twain, and to the multifaceted and truly gorgeous Thalía. Everybody contributed so beautifully to Christmas, the 10th anniversary deluxe edition, and even Michael Bublé managed to steer his ship the best way he could and managed to own his vocal performances in the best way possible. All thanks to his youthful sounding baritone voice, his smooth, virile, and smoky mission reminiscent of Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and Bing Crosby, and being his own affable performer. And you know what I'm gonna give Michael Bublé's Christmas album, Christmas, the 10th anniversary deluxe edition. A well-deserved rating of 5 stars out of 5 stars. If you are a Michael Bublé fan, even a die-hard Michael Bublé fan, you owe it to yourself to not only listen to this CD, but also own it, whether it's for your own or as a holiday gift for people that you care about. You will not be disappointed, especially with that much artistry occurring in this album. Michael Bublé was not the only one who made it work, but also his fellow guest singers who made it just as strong and just as wonderful to listen to. And as I stated before, it would be a lovely holiday gift not only for you, especially if you're a Michael Bublé fan, but also fellow Michael Bublé fans or even people who have never heard about Michael Bublé before. And for those of you who listened to Michael Bublé's Christmas album, Christmas, the 10th anniversary edition, what'd you think of it? Did you really enjoy this album from beginning to end? Was there a Christmas carol that you particularly loved? Did you also enjoy a lot of Michael Bublé's original compositions? Or did you feel like this album was not really to your liking to the point where you felt that not even Michael Bublé or even the guest singers could salvage it? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my final Christmas-related review of Michael Bublé's Christmas album, Christmas, the 10th Anniversary Deluxe Edition. Tune in later where I review Jonas Kaufmann, the tenor. So until then, I hope you all had a happy holidays, everybody.